Welcome back to the Vital Strategies Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Lonergan. At Vital, we believe that the most valuable things in life aren't a big bank account. One area that we won't trade any amount of money for is our health. Today, we're going to be talking with Dr. Tom McCoy. He's my personal concierge doctor, and his practice is focused on proactive healthcare so you can live a full life. Dr. Tom and I get into the differences between the traditional medical model and the new framework that he has developed to develop a specialized plan for each individual to optimize their health. Stay tuned as we cover everything from why good sleep is critical for our well-being, why CrossFit might be the best way to optimize health, and how relationships matter to our well-being. Stay to the end to hear why doing hard things in the gym is good for our mental and physical health as well. Let's dive in with Dr. Tom McCoy. Dr. Tom McCoy, I am excited about having you on the podcast today. We've been working together for a while on what we'll call my proactive healthcare, and I'm excited about all the new things you've got going on, and just really digging into what proactive medicine looks like versus reactive medicine. I think it's sort of an uncommon thing out there that most people aren't familiar with. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Very excited to be here. And I know we have a lot of interesting topics to dive into. So let's quit beating around the bush and get after it.
I love it. I love it. So I want to frame this conversation. You know, our whole focus is we help our clients pay less tax, build more wealth so they can live a great life. And we feel like that great life piece is made up of this acronym called REACH. And so the R's for relationships, E's for experiences, A's for advancement or growth, C's for contribution, and then H is for our health. And we think there's three components to the health. There's spiritual, emotional, and physical. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to dive into the physical side today. And I'm going to argue that if you don't have the physical health, none of those other things really matter. So this is going to be good. I first got introduced to you because I went to my sort of standard primary care physical, and I said, hey, okay, my dad has been a fairly active guy, and he has been what I would consider healthy his whole life, but he had triple bypass surgery. He's developed diabetes, and I want to protect myself against those things. And they run me through all this stuff, and they go, you're healthy. And I said, okay, great. But what do I need to do to not end up down that same path? And they didn't have any good answers for me. And so I started looking and ended up running across you. And so I'm excited to get into this concept of sort of proactive precision medicine versus a typical primary care healthcare scenario. Can you tell us what the difference is, what you do at McCoy Medical, and how it's going to be different than my standard doctor appointment?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great place to start, and to take the example that you just gave of, what most of us experience when we go into a typical primary care visit is that if your blood pressure is within normal limits and your BMI, which has so many issues with it to begin with, isn't significantly out of whack, you are relatively well put together, you're going to get a clean bill of health. The issue with that is that a lot of the diagnostic studies that are really the most important ones to indicate whether or not you are truly going to have not just a long life, but a life of vitality that will allow you to enjoy those years that you are alive, are not done in the traditional primary care setting. And I think a lot of us in that world are aware of that. But unfortunately, payers and the powers that be don't have a vested interest in spending the time or dollars optimizing you. They want to keep you in a space where they're spending as little money as possible. And then if or when you do get sick, try and find ways not to support your journey, to all of our disillusionment. So I think that when you look at the comparison of precision medicine to what happens in the mainstream model, I think the definition of precision would really be we are looking to support the health journey of the individual in front of us. So where many decisions get made for individuals based on epidemiological studies that are done for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people, and don't really take into context the nuances of the person in front of us, and they all get lumped together. But when you take the time and create the space to actually get to know the person in front of you, understand what their health goals are, understand what their greatest areas of health exposure are and
Mhm.
risk are, and address those in a systematic fashion, that's when you can really start to move the needle and put people in a position to where they can live a very long and active life, which is the goal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you hit on so many of the things that I was looking for, the optimizing my health. Like, I think about this from so many areas of my life. I go and I find a coach in areas that I find are important, right? Like my business, I have a coach. In my fitness, I have a coach. In my mental health, I have a coach. And so it's like, why wouldn't I have somebody that can look at what I'm made up of, right? Sort of get inside me and go, all right, let's look at your DNA, your blood work, all of these things, and go, all right, here's how we're going to optimize what you're doing. And then
Mhm.
also take it a step further, not just my supplementation in my food, but like, let's figure out how to move your body in a way that, you're going to be well and be, have this vitality into the future. Cause I look
Mhm.
at things, I just appreciate how you've helped me. I'm turning 44 here shortly, and it's like, I'm still hitting some PRs, in
Mhm.
the weight room, which surprised me. I'm not trying to, but every now and then the weight's moving well, and I'm like,
Yeah.
let's move it and see how it goes. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm on the what I should be the back half of my as a college athlete and those types of things. But I feel
Mhm.
like I'm on the back half of my athletic career, but I'm
Mhm.
still performing at a pretty high level, and it's like
Mhm.
this is fun. I'm not dropping off at all, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you highlight an important point there that I think is different that from, what we do at McCoy Medical and a lot of more individualized practices is that none of us should be settling for good enough.
Hmm.
Right. And unfortunately, in the mainstream model, oftentimes, unless red flags are being raised of concern, you're going to be shuttled along, right? Because
Yep.
for a clinician who's in a very busy clinic and they're seeing 30 to 40 patients a day, Patrick, if you walk in the door, like
Mhm.
you're an easy mark, right? You're a quick
Sure.
turn, 2 minutes. I just bought myself 15 minutes to catch up on charting and get ready for the
Right.
next train wreck that's coming through the door, right?
Sure.
That is not the dynamic that we should be setting up, right? We need to give every individual who rocks through the
Hmm.
door the
Yeah.
appropriate time and consideration and counseling, right? And be able to do this, like you have to have the space to do that.
Yeah.
But preventative counseling and understanding what's going to help you achieve the goals that you didn't think were possible is just as fulfilling and as important as helping somebody at a different point in their healthcare journey.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. So I guess I'm very curious. When you discovered in your medical education, like, okay, there's a problem with the current system. And when the sort of light bulb went off, where you're like, okay, we've got to find another way, and how this what I'll call new framework was developed. So, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any physician who works in mainstream medicine thinks that, it's a perfectly oiled machine. I mean,
Hmm.
none of us are under that illusion. We all know that there are serious issues.
Hmm.
The challenge becomes, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? And how do I even begin to do something different, right? And with the field that you're in, you can appreciate this for a physician who spent their entire scholastic life essentially studying the sciences to say, okay, now I'm going to be an entrepreneur and open up a business and figure out how to do that while I'm taking care, like the inertia to overcome, to step outside and to jump out of the
Hmm.
nest is huge for anyone.
Yep.
It's very scary, it's very intimidating.
Hmm.
I think that that's a big part of it. So I think most people are in that system now and they know that it's messed up, but they're scared and they don't know what to do about it. So that I think is there for most of us.
Hmm.
I had the fortunate experience to train at a county hospital where I worked the majority of my career before I left, and it was an unopposed program. So we did all of our own surgeries and ran the ICU and worked in the ER, right, which led to a wonderful breadth of experience and ultimately gave me the confidence that, when I knew it was time to transition and do something different and help people proactively instead of being reactive, right? I was
Mhm.
in emergency medicine for almost 15 years.
Yep.
And, once every month or two, I would find an extra 15 minutes where I could sit with somebody at 3 in the morning and actually have a discussion. But
Mhm.
generally, people are coming to you on their worst day.
Yep.
And this is not often the best time to have those types of conversations, right?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
it's an amazing experience to save somebody's life, but you never see them again, right? There's no
Right.
connection, and that's what's expected, right?
Yeah.
So the sense of fulfillment that comes with partnering with someone to identify goals and give them a deep understanding of where they are, craft a path together of how to get there, and then seeing them achieve that over time
Yep.
is so fulfilling, right? And something that you can relate to in watching
Mhm.
people, through their
Yep.
financial planning and how they achieve their
Yep.
goals, right? It's no different. And I own, a gym as well, and it's the same thing when I coach there. I mean, watching somebody achieve things that they couldn't do 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, and then be able to do things that they never thought they were going to be able to do. It's an amazing experience, right?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I want to point out that, in the ER you were saving lives like right then and there. Now you're changing the trajectory of people's lives and you're saving lives in a whole different way, right? I think about the statement of some people are they live for like 18 years and then they die, 70 years later, something like that, and
Hmm.
it's like you're giving people life, this vitality all the way through. They're
Hmm.
able to like perform and do things and be excited about all of um, the things that happen in life. And I think there's also something too, like we talked about emotional health. I don't know how you have good emotional health if you don't have good physical health, right?
Hmm.
Like they're so interconnected that if I'm not moving my body on a regular basis, I'm not going to be, well, emotionally either. And so I don't know. I see what you're doing is you're giving people so much more life, the way you're doing medicine now versus, the way they were, you were sort of reacting to these crisis situations. So, um, good for
Yeah,
you.
it's funny because that contrast was really one of the main drivers to push me to make this kind of my full
Hmm.
time focus, right? Because
Yep.
when we went through the pandemic and was leading the department and taking them through that, for a long time, I had been working swings and overnights the majority of my career.
Yep.
And it was funny because when the pandemic happened, I really had to switch to days
Hmm.
and set out, an outside facility and a tent hospital and all the workflows and everything that were going to come through with that.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because what I realized is that once I got my circadian rhythm in check because my schedule changed, my physical health improved significantly. So it was this very interesting dichotomy where it was definitely one of the busiest and
Yeah.
most intense times of my life. But a lot of the underlying health issues that I had, both physical and emotional, got
Hmm.
so much better when I was living in sync with my circadian rhythm and my
Sure.
biorhythm.
Yeah.
And so after, getting through the pandemic and then ultimately having the opportunity to do this full time, and that's how it is for a lot of us, right? It's that N of one experience where we actually go through it. And that really solidifies kind of philosophically our worldview and gives us a
Yeah.
deeper understanding that we can share that with somebody and help them, experience that as well. Because when you have something that's that profound and life changing, like you don't want to keep it
Hmm.
to yourself. You want to share it with other people.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And so I'd love to sort of dig into what do you see as the like foundational, we'll call it level one, if I'm moving towards being well,
Hmm.
what does that look like? What are steps one, two, and three that most people like should get sort of tuned into before they start moving on to the next phases?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. And, it's interesting because, we work with the best athletes in the world
Hmm.
to, people in their 70s and 80s who, are in wherever location they are in their journey. We're all humans.
Hmm.
Our needs, to quote a CrossFit quote from Glenn Glassman, right? They differ in, degree, not kind. right?
Hmm.
And it's the same thing when we talk with our professional athletes, right? It's a human first approach. And when you take that, you know, lens through which to view health, it starts with how you fuel your body,
Hmm.
right? What your fitness regimen looks like, and then recovery, right? Which
Hmm.
includes sleep and autonomic nervous system balance, and what your sympathetic inputs look like, which is a reflection of all of your allostatic stressors, right, that you
Hmm.
experience, from friends, family, work, your engagement with social media. All of those things go into that bucket, right? How do you find balance?
Hmm.
And we can spend a lot of time talking about the minutia of this, that, and the other, and this supplement or that medication. And if you're sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night, none of it is going to
Hmm.
matter.
Yep.
And so you have to start there with everyone, and you build from those core pillars from there.
Yeah, I love that, and I think sleep is probably it's the best legal performance enhancing drug on the planet, right? Like if you
Mm,
want to perform at a high level physically and mentally, you've got to get some sleep.
mhm,
And I this is something that I've had to learn the hard way. Just figuring I could grind, go to bed at midnight, get up at 4:30, just keep it going. And it's like, no, I wear Whoop. I love the data. I've had this thing for 3 or 4 years. I don't need it anymore, but I kind of like to know it. So it's
mhm.
changed my behavior to the better, sleep consistency. I'm not opposed to people drinking alcohol. I just look at what it does to me and it's like,
Yeah,
it screws up my recovery. So we're like, all right, so yeah, just to highlight all of those things, I think those are all fantastic. But I think the sleep piece is one of those that people, they'll stay up watching Netflix, whatever. Everybody seems to be sleep deprived. It's like get dialed into your sleep because it really really matters.
yeah.
Good.
It's funny because a couple points there before we move on. I mean, you're preaching to the choir,
Yeah.
right? You're somebody
Yep.
who spent the majority of my career sleep deprived and would regularly work 24 or 36 hours without
Yeah.
stopping, and to my physical and emotional
Hmm.
detriment, right? And
Yep.
in addition to that, we just put out an ebook, right, with our professional athletes, and they asked me what I wanted to write about. Right, was the first one, and so it was a
Hmm.
no brainer. Sleep was the first one. They're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yes,
Yeah.
my friend. We start with sleep." So
Yeah.
we were a little surprised with that it wasn't nutrition or a training protocol. But as you said, the science is very clear. And you can look at reaction timed, perceived level of exertion,
Hmm. Yep.
recovery, peak performance outputs, more nuanced findings with coordination and scoring and I mean, all of those studies have
Hmm.
been done, and
Yep.
there's a very clear linear relationship there.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't, you can't believe everything you see on social media, but I saw some study that said, the percentage chance of getting injured on poor sleep goes up dramatically,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's like, it's just across the board. Sleep is so good for you. So,
Hmm.
good. So we sort of laid the foundation there. So how about fine tuning? Like you've talked about dealing with some professional athletes, and I'm looking forward to getting to that in later in the conversation. But what are some of the fine tuning things that you're doing, sort of tip of the spear protocols that you see as like beneficial? And are there any things out there you have tried with your athletes, you sort of came across that maybe are hyped up that aren't necessarily getting the results that you would
I can't give
expect?
you, Patrick. I can't give you all the secrets on the first date, man.
Okay.
But I will say that there's a number of other diagnostic studies that
Yeah.
we feel at McCoy Medical are key to understanding kind of where you are on the health
Hmm.
continuum.
Sure.
And so everybody who comes into the practice, right, we do a body composition analysis.
Hmm.
With bioimpedance if we need to, ideally with the DEXA, because the
Yep.
first thing that we want to identify, especially with the dynamics in our population, is are you under muscled? Are you
Yep.
over adiposed? And
Hmm.
what is your level of visceral adiposity, right? And so
Yep.
that's kind of step one, two, and three.
Yep.
On top of that, it's been very clearly demonstrated now in a number of very large studies the importance of having a above average higher elite VO2 max for your age group. So we do
Hmm.
VO2 max testing on everybody who comes
Yep.
in to the practice, and then a relatively comprehensive set of labs is
Hmm.
an important thing to do. And
Yep.
this falls into that bucket of you just don't know if you don't know.
Hmm.
And the number one killer in the United States is heart disease,
Yep.
by far. And too many of us have strong family histories and
Hmm.
have never done those tests before and don't have any insight into our risk.
Yep.
And unfortunately, what happens in the mainstream model is when there are signals that you should do a bit more of an evaluation, it just doesn't happen because
Hmm.
a lot of those calculators are those epidemiologic calculators that don't even start to apply until you get over 40 years old or have
Right.
multiple comorbidities, right? And you use this analogy a lot, right? And this is one that Peter T and other folks use. It's like, I'm not going to tell you to wait until you have cancer to tell you to stop smoking, right? And you can
Right.
make those arguments in a lot of areas of health in regards to insulin sensitivity and metabolic function, in regards to your level of cardiovascular fitness, right? The earlier we start, the easier it's going to be to move the needle.
Yep.
But you have to do the right tests to be able to understand kind of what it is you need to focus on in triage.
I love that. And one thing that we talked about was, I went and got my, I believe it's called calcium scoring tests, like looking at
Coronary
my
calcium
artery.
score.
Yep. Yep. Thank
Hmm.
you. And
Hmm.
because it's like, okay, there's some history. My number should be zero. Let's just go confirm that it's zero.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if it's anything above zero, maybe I should start making some changes now. And the good news is it was zero, and so it's
Yeah.
like there's nothing to be concerned about. But yeah,
And
I appreciate
this
that.
is, I was just going to say, I mean, this is the thing that I think is so interesting, right, in the blogosphere and the podcast world at this point, right, with so many people who are taking a keto approach or a carnivore approach
Hmm.
and have
Yep.
very abnormal lipids. uh, it's very easy to find out if there's an issue, right?
Hmm. Yep.
And I see people who have significant abnormalities on a lipid panel, and we get coronary calcium scores or CCTAs or Clearlys, and they've got clean coronaries, and it's
Hmm.
fantastic. The point is that we want you to be an informed decision maker, right?
Right.
You want to have all the information before you so that that you're making the best decision for you, and it's going to be different. Like, I don't have an
Hmm.
agenda, right? My
Right.
job is to put the information in front of you, and we can make that decision together, but ultimately it's your decision to make, right? And
Yeah.
I'm going to support you in whatever that is, but we want it to be an informed one.
Yep. No, that's fantastic. So I want to move on to again those foundational pieces that you laid out. Uh, Food and movement.
Mm.
We've talked, and we believe those things are medicine, right? Like that's
Mhm.
let's if we put the right foods in our body and move well, that's good. So
Mhm.
you're the CEO of CrossFit Medical Society, and you also own a CrossFit gym. Now,
Mhm.
I'd like to. One thing that I'm sort of proud of is I do CrossFit, and the first rule of CrossFit is always talk about CrossFit. The second rule of CrossFit is don't forget the first rule of CrossFit. And I don't talk about CrossFit that much, so I'm happy that you're here, and it gives me a chance to exercise the first and second rule of CrossFit. So
I think half the audience just tuned out, Patrick.
I'm sorry about that, but they should tune in because this is I look at where I was. I did my 12th CrossFit Open this year.
Oh,
So
fantastic, man. That's
yeah,
great.
CrossFit been around a little longer than that, but I just happened to be lucky that there was a gal that opened up a CrossFit gym. A friend of mine or a friend of my wife's drug her there, and she was like, "I think you'd like this." And so I
Yeah,
went. And,
yeah.
I was terrible at most of it.
Yep,
And
that
it's been
hooked you.
interesting to track my progress. When I started off, I was in the bottom third of my age group, and
Mhm.
now I finished. I went to quarterfinals, and then I was in the top 25% of the top 25%. So it's like, okay, I'm getting more fit, and every year I like to just track my fitness compared to my age group, and it's like, am I
100%, man.
moving in the right direction? So
Yep.
um, so I'm excited a little bit about this conversation on maybe more than a little bit on the CrossFit side and how you see like the CrossFit methodology fitting into health and wellness. Because I think
Yeah.
there's a like we need to be. I think we just need to acknowledge like games athletes are not you know, that's one level. But I think there's something like when you look at the foundation of CrossFit, how it's so good for your health, and you
Yeah.
don't have to be a games athlete to
Yeah.
do that. So,
Yeah. No, I appreciate you bringing all of that up. I think that, it links directly to what we know is and are core components of optimizing your health.
mhm,
And if you're a CrossFit aficionado, right, you're familiar with the sickness, wellness, fitness continuum, right?
mhm,
And CrossFit is one of the training modalities that hits all of the pieces that are going to allow you to move and continue to move from the wellness to the fitness domain. And why is that? Right. Well, let's talk about the biggest health challenges, right, in our country and around the world in many ways, and why CrossFit is such a powerful intervention.
mhm,
And it's not that you can't do these things in other ways. It's that CrossFit is essentially put it into a box and wrapped it with a bow and can hand it to you every day when you walk into a class, right?
mhm,
And the first one is that you're lifting heavy stuff and you're building lean body mass and muscle. There is a direct correlation with quality of years and independence, which all of us want. None of us want to end up in a skilled nursing facility. All of us want to continue to live in the home or the apartment that we are in for as long as we can and be independent.
mhm,
Uh, and not to mention the impact on metabolic health and insulin sensitivity when you have more of the most metabolically active tissue with this muscle, right? So you need to lift heavy things to do that. In addition, right, for women, axial loading, impact for bone mineral density and mitigating osteopenia, osteoporosis, extremely important, right?
mhm,
What is the other thing that we talked about already, right? So having a very high cardiovascular capacity, right? How do you
mhm.
train and improve your VO2? It's by doing high intensity interval work. What do we do in CrossFit? A ton of that, right? We do it
Mhm.
almost every day.
Yep.
And a lot of times on, Thursdays, which are often mono days, right? A lot of that is structured in a traditional VO2 workout pattern, right? And
Mhm.
it gives us the opportunity to educate people about that. The third piece, which I think differentiates CrossFit from so many other fitness approaches in the space right now, is community. Anybody who's interested should take the time to read the Surgeon General's report on the impact of isolation and loneliness on health that was put out last year, and that being socially isolated or lonely is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And connection to a community, which you get in spades with CrossFit, who is reinforcing positive health behaviors, which in the lifestyle concept approach, which we have, when you're trying to establish habits that are going to allow you to maintain and continue to create health, right? It is all about commitment to the process, being there day in and day out. And when you're part of a community or a tribe, if you've read James Clear's work and Atomic
Mhm.
Habits, the impact of going against that tribe or community makes it
Yep.
significantly harder, right? So you can leverage that power. A lot of our area of interest and then what I focus on is the impact of community
Mhm.
on diseases of despair, right?
Yep.
And this is such a huge challenge for us right now with anxiety, depression,
Mhm.
and substance use disorder.
Yep.
And CrossFit, because of its high intensity interval work, is one of the best ways to start to develop new brain pathways that are
Mm.
much more functional and sustainable to
Yep.
replace a lot of the deficiencies that exist in those other areas.
I love that. So there's so many things you touched on there. I'd like to just go back and chip away at some of these. So there's a book called The Good Life, and it looks at it's one of the longest studies ever done on life expectancy and that type of thing. It was a Harvard study, and they highlighted that exact same point you did around loneliness is akin to being like a heavy smoker, and
Mm,
it takes so many years off of your life. And so I'd like to just point that piece out. And then another thing along with that is we're more connected than ever, connected via social
mm,
media, but
mm,
like it's isolating us. And
mhm.
so I've taken some steps to just like create some boundaries between me and social media. I think putting some healthy boundaries around social media is important. And then a couple of things you talked about, like lifting heavy things and how important that is for building muscle and bone density and that type of thing. Like, I've done some triathlons and sort of lived a little bit in that world, and
Mhm.
it's good and fun, and it's good for my cardiovascular health, but it doesn't have that weightlifting component. And then we can
Mhm.
also look at just sort of the global gym, the Globo gym model, where I'm just like pumping iron, and sure, I'm lifting heavy things, but I can't jog down the hallway or run up the stairs after my kids. So
Mhm.
I agree with you. That's the piece that CrossFit brings together, and the community. Every time I travel, I love just stopping into a gym, dropping in, and you know, people are just so welcoming. Like, and you all suffer together, and you have a good time, and it's. I've never seen anything like the CrossFit community. It's fantastic. So I appreciate you highlighting all those points and how they fit into our wellness in general, because it really does matter. So
Yeah.
um, thank
I
you.
think I think it's important, right, for us to remember that we are living with the physiology and genetics that were developed, right, over
Hmm.
tens of thousands of years in a world that is constructed and gives us a human experience that's very different to what we're designed for, right?
Hmm. Yep.
But we are social creatures and we
Yep.
are designed to function optimally in tribes. And this is coming from a card carrying introvert. We are designed to
Hmm.
do hard things collectively together towards a shared effort. Right. And
Yep.
that's the beautiful thing about the structure of a CrossFit class and the
Hmm.
community is we are working collectively together, doing hard things, supporting each other and overcoming challenges over time and watching each other grow.
Hmm.
This, I think, ties into an innate physiologic and genetic need that we have as humans that
Yeah.
modern existence robs us of in many ways.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And you touched on another point. Thank you for bringing all these up. There's a book called The Comfort Crisis that talks about how we need to do hard things, like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's good for us. And I just see that, you know, I like doing hard things at the CrossFit gym because it helps me do hard things at work, helps me do hard things in my relationships. It just like transfers to so many areas of my life. And so
No, I think Michael Easter's work, especially The Comfort Crisis, should be required reading for most of us.
it's got me outside more, like
Mhm.
I'll throw on my rucksack and walk to the office, and I got a shower here. So it's like I'll work out in the morning, put my backpack on, walk to the office, shower up, get ready to go. And it's like
Perfect.
that sunshine on my face being outside. And I know you like to be outside. You hunt, can you just talk us through a little bit of the things you like to enjoy? It sounds like you like to be outside. And I think that's good for your health too. So,
Yeah, no, and this is an area where I think that the science is pretty clear too, and it ties into what we just talked about around our kind of physiologic and genetic needs. So, I do because I have identified for myself that living in tune with my circadian rhythm is so important. I want to try and utilize those cues throughout
hmm.
the day to help
Hmm.
reinforce that cycle, right? So part of that is getting morning light exposure. Another part of that is getting natural light exposure during the day and then trying to be outside in the evenings when I can.
Yep.
And then, throughout the year, one of the things that I'm most passionate about is being able to, take extended trips in the backcountry where I'm completely unplugged and off the
Hmm.
grid.
Yep.
And if I'm fortunate enough, right, that provides a lot of the food for my family for the coming year.
Yeah.
Michael talks a lot about that in his book, right? With,
Hmm.
misogis and what that means when you take a period of time and you push yourself on an adventure where there's a good chance that you wouldn't be able to complete it, right? And so
Yeah.
for me, being able to go into the backcountry in the wilderness for 2 weeks, and if we get fortunate enough, have to pack out, a
Hmm.
400 pounds of meat on our backs. It's a
Yeah.
real challenge, especially when you're
Hmm.
in the middle of nowhere,
Yep.
and that pushes you. So, and those are good things, right? We
Yeah.
all we all need those outlets, and you return from that, with a level of resilience
Yep.
uh, and determination and grit that,
Yep.
again, our existence, and as his book is so aptly titled, The Comfort
Hmm.
Crisis, right? It creates this situation to where we lose that, right? And then because we don't have it, we can't apply it to these other areas of our life when we meet
Hmm.
hardship, right?
Yeah.
And so I see those experiences as much as, being amazing and individual as training for when I come back to this world that we have to exist in, so that,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
it doesn't throw me for a loop.
Yeah, yeah, no, and you mentioned the misogi, and the thing I love about that is the way he defines it is with training, you have a 50-50 chance of succeeding. And it's
Right.
like, okay, that means it's going to be really hard. And then so that's
Right.
like the first rule. The second rule is don't die.
Don't die.
Don't set it up in a way that it can kill you. So it's like, all right, it's good.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll make sure that that book's in the show notes
that's a
for
great
people to
one.
check it out because yeah, I agree. It's one that was recommended to me, and I've recommended it to a lot of people, and just so much of that hit home for me. So
Mhm.
great. All right. So the last thing I'd like to touch on is you're partnering with Proven Athletics in Nashville. Tia Claire Toomey is sort of the face of the Proven brand. Her and her husband Shane Orr sort of founded that. She's a 6-time CrossFit World Champion.
Mhm.
So you're obviously working with the best of the best and helping them optimize their health and recovery. Do you have any? Are you seeing some protocols again that maybe we can take from these elite athletes and apply to our everyday lives? We've already talked a little bit about sleep and recovery, like that's an
Yeah.
important piece. I'm sure they're dialed in there. But is there anything else that you're like, hey, this is something that's worthwhile for the
Yeah.
everyday
Well, I
folks to
think
do?
the most important thing, right, that you just glanced over is completely not true. Because, in addition to Proven, right, we work with people in the NFL and
Mm-hmm.
MLB and, pro serving, all these different sports. Most of them get to that level because they have an unbelievable amount of natural or God-given
Mm-hmm.
talent.
Yep. Yep.
And they can perform at that level despite not having their sleep or their nutrition dialed in. And sometimes we sit down in these meetings and like, are you kidding me? Like, this is what you eat every day. This is how little
Yep.
you sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes back to what we talked about before. Like, we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep.
the needs differ in degree, not kind. And so it starts there, even with the fittest people in the
Yeah.
world. Right.
Got it.
But that being said, there are things from a performance standpoint that, I think the science supports from an ergogenic aid category.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really about identifying, okay, what's going to give us the most bang for our buck?
Yep.
Because, CrossFit is very different than doing an ultra, which is very different than doing the Tour de France, which is very,
Mm-hmm.
all these buckets are different. So, you know, what protocols you put together, how you execute, with them. And again, not overburdening somebody with so many pills and supplements that, they get confused and throw their hands up in the air. It's really about identifying, okay, what's highest yield,
Mm-hmm.
what's going to get us where we need to be and how do we execute on it. And a lot of times it's, the same things that you're doing, but it's timing, it's the distribution throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for a lot of the CrossFit professionals, we spend a lot of time talking about recovery and autonomic balance
Mm-hmm.
because they train so much and they push so hard that developing a toolkit that they can dive into, and whether it's certain breathwork exercises or journaling or what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing with their morning or evening rituals, etc., to kind of bring some of that balance back because they spend hours upon hours a day in the sympathetic zone. And so
Mm-hmm.
learning how to do that even immediately after a workout so that you can start to balance that autonomic nervous system is hugely important.
That's great. Thank you. All right, Dr. Tom, this has been fantastic. Is there anything else we should be talking about that we haven't talked about so far?
Man, that's a great question. I think that we've hit a lot of the high points. I think that the takeaways, I think, for us from this discussion, for people listening, is that
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't found avenues to kind of push on your boundaries or push on your edges or put yourself in uncomfortable situations, you should try to find those because
Mm-hmm.
you will respond well to that. And the other big bucket is that it's very easy to exist in this world now. And as you alluded to, think you're socially connected, but not have a
Mm-hmm.
real community.
Yep.
And whether that's through your local church or your
Mhm.
box or your affiliate or where you train or another group you volunteer for, whatever it is,
Yep.
you need to seek that out, because you're never going to be as, going back to your acronym with reach, as
Mhm.
emotionally well balanced and happy, no
Mhm.
matter how much of an introvert you are, if you don't have those things in your life.
Yeah.
So work to seek that out and develop it over time.
I love it. That's fantastic. So, how do people get connected with you? I know you're obviously busy with all of the things you've got going on, but if somebody's like, "Hey, I want to learn more about Dr. Tom McCoy and McCoy Medical and everything they've got going on," what's the best way for folks to get plugged in?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why we started this work is because we love developing long-term relationships with people.
Hmm.
Would be more than happy to talk with folks if they have interest in working with us or what we do. Website's a great way to connect with us. They can book, an exploratory call, McCoy-medical.com.
Hmm.
I'm on Instagram at vitalhumandoc, all
Hmm.
one word. They can find me there. CrossFit Medical Society, they can connect with us there. But the McCoy Medical and the Instagram IG or handle are probably the best ways to get a hold of us.
Fantastic. We will have all of those pieces in the show notes. And yeah, I just appreciate the fact that we're so much of what we're doing, our clients are trying to do is be proactive instead of reactive. And you
Mhm.
fit exactly into that mold. Like let's be proactive with our health and live a fulfilling, like vital life all the way to the end. I would
Yeah,
much rather like burn out than fade away, right?
yeah,
So it's like let's come skidding in, on fire at the end, and that'll be okay. So,
yeah. And to that
um,
point, Patrick, I think
yeah,
that the other important thing for people to know is that they don't have to settle, right?
hmm,
And I think a
yeah,
lot of people are in relationships with their care team or what have you, and they just think, well, they're a doctor, this is the
yep,
system, this is what I got, I guess that's how it is. And it's
yeah,
it's just like anything else, right? If you don't have a connection with that person, or you
hmm,
feel like they aren't, providing you what you need,
yeah,
keep looking. The
yeah,
right person is out there, you just got to find them.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also important to make people aware that we've never met in person. I'm in Iowa. You're out in. Forgive me. I'm not even sure. You're in Nashville,
I
and
mean, yeah,
we're
we have brick and mortars in Nashville and Ohio. We're in
yeah.
Ohio today. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like we don't need to be in the same place for you to help me be proactive with my healthcare. And so anybody, I'm sure across the United States,
Yep.
maybe even internationally, it doesn't really matter. It's a cool thing about
Yep.
the work you do. You can help people be well no matter where they're at. So yeah, I couldn't encourage you more to reach out to Dr. Tom McCoy and McCoy Medical and get plugged in, and just it'll be worthwhile. The foundation of just about everything we do starts with our health. If we've got the energy to keep pushing through the day, and it allow us to have great relationships, do all the experience things, continue to grow, make a contribution, and ultimately be healthy. That's exciting. That's what we're looking to do. So, Doctor, I appreciate you being here today and sharing your wisdom with us. And well, I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the time, Patrick. Thanks for taking it, and look forward to chatting again in the future.
Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Vital Strategies podcast. We wanted to give you the first look at the tools we are developing that will help you with the 4 cornerstones of wealth building. To be an insider to get access to the tools to help manage your cash flow, create a tax strategy, invest wisely, and protect the wealth you're building, go to vitalstrategies.com/cornerstones. You'll be the first in line to get access. These tools are designed to help you pay less tax so you can build more wealth and live a great life. Again, that website is vitalstrategies.com/cornerstones. I want to remind you to rate and review the Vital Strategies podcast on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps us towards our goal of saving our clients and listeners over $1 billion in taxes. Those dollars are better used in your hands versus the government bureaucracy. Thank you for listening and for being a vital entrepreneur. You're vital because you are the backbone of our economy, creating opportunities for your employees and driving growth. You're vital to your family, fostering abundance not only financially, but in all aspects of life that matter most. Finally, you're vital to me because you strive to build wealth, make an impact through your business, and live a great life.